Hi, hello guys. So I'm making this video just to have a brief personal review of the 7950 X3D. I've been using this for almost 2 weeks now. I think 1.5 weeks to be exact. Just want to tell you what I think. So I haven't been chasing like the top end CPUs since the very beginning. This is the first time I actually get a top line CPU. I have been chasing top GPUs since the RTX 285. That was I think more than a decade ago. Since then I was upgrading through GTX 480 or 490. I think 480 and then 580, and since 580 I've been using SLI every generation until 1080 Ti SLI. That's the last generation of SLI I used. So that's a little bit history of me. So this is actually the first time that I'm buying a top end CPU, and the reason is because I think they're in more modern generation GPUs. We can see a real bottlenecks happening and in the CPU space. So if you're getting a really top end graphics card like the 4090, then you may actually experience some sort of bottleneck one way or the other, and that's why I'm buying the latest and greatest this time. I have skipped Intel for reasons that I'm going to talk about, but yeah, for the benchmark, I think everyone can read from online resources, right? So it's around an average 6% better than the Intel 3900K, but I don't think the difference is that vast. I mean, especially when you compare with the difference between 5800 X3D and say the Intel 12 Gen 12900K. So there is a notable difference, and the price of 5800 X3D makes it so much more valuable. So I think that's the story of the last generation, and this gen the difference is much smaller. And the thing is, at launch, which at launch I was getting it on the first day, the price is actually even worse than the 13900KS, which is the top line 13th gen CPU from Intel. And suddenly the value proposition of AMD seems to have ceased at that point. Yeah, so that's the situation right now. You get a more expensive CPU with probably more expensive motherboards, because the motherboards from AMD this time are actually not that cheap, right? So especially when compared with the previous gen AM4 motherboards, I think they are really hiking the price quite a bit. Oh, why am I getting stunned at every move? It's crazy. Yeah, anyway, I'm just going to stop here and continue with this review. In terms of gaming, so you generally see an improvement over the 3900K, but not always. You see there are outliers out there where the 3900K still performs better than 7950 X3D, and also you see in some situations, I think it's Shadows of Tomb Raiders, that this CPU actually is better than the Intel by I think 15%. That's the most drastic difference that you can see between these CPUs. So I'm locking the FPS at 60 for this one because I think there are some issues at 120. The motion just slows down. I don't think it's like a frame rate or a frame time issue. It's just a bug in the game that you can't turn it to 120. Otherwise, the game will just turn the slow motion over time. Yeah. Anyway, and those are the outliers that I've mentioned. But there's one particular game that I would like to mention here, and that's WRC Generations. It's a rally racing game. So when I was playing it with 4090 with 5800 X3D, the frame rate actually is not bad. It's still above like 60, and if you turn on DLSS, it can go up to 100 something. But once you switch to the car front view, I think the FPS is still there, but strangely, you just experience all the stutters. And even if you check the 1% lows, they are not that bad, but the stutters just happen from nowhere. So I'm not sure why that happened, but 7950 X3D seems to have solved that issue. So in that game, especially when you are playing at night and your headlights on, and if there's rain, it's even worse. So I'm not sure. I mean, why they could like mess things up like that with 4090. But it seems that it is a CPU issue there, because once I've upgraded to the current CPU, it seems to have solved the problem. So that's just one game that's quite curious to check out if you want to, because I don't think many people are aware of that game. But if you are generally into racing or you don't mind playing racing game, I really recommend that one. I think it's a great variety of tracks, and I think that's more fun than Forza, where you just like think mostly racing like empty like country roads. So I've used up all my potions apparently. Time to head back. So, and when it comes to the price, of course, everyone will be concerned about the price to performance ratio. So, the price of the motherboard and the price of the CPU. So, motherboards, I'm using the MSI Mac Ace. I think it's at a similar price to the Asus Extreme motherboard. I don't think they have released an Apex motherboard for this generation in AMD. So the most expensive ones would be the Mac Ace, the Asus Extreme, and of course the most expensive one would be the MSI Godlike, and that one just costs almost the same as a 4090, or sorry, maybe a 4080. So I don't think that's worth it. The thing with the motherboard this generation is you get a variety of them. They all have different functions out of the PCIe lane, so it's very different from when you go and buy an Intel motherboard or an AM4 motherboard. So you really have to look what features you like on your PCIe Gen 5 lanes. In my case, I don't use USB 4 or Thunderbolt, so I'm just getting as many Gen 5 PCIe lanes for the M.2 SSDs as possible. And one major concern for me is without compromising the PCIe lane 1, which is the graphics card slot. So I think most gamers will be in my situation as well. You want as much storage as possible, but you don't want to downgrade your graphics. I think the difference is not that much whether you run it at X16 or X8, but there is a difference, and since you're getting this kind of motherboards, this kind of GPUs, I don't think you want any compromise, and that's where we are coming from. So in terms of like price to performance ratio, definitely not a plus this time as compared with Intel, but there's a big but here. If you are coming from AM4 and you were able to hold off buying the Intel 3900K or the 13th gen series, then you may seriously consider getting one of the AM5s right now, because it says it's going to last until 2025 at least. I think in the past Ryzen generation that's like AM4, you get a little bit more than 3 years. So that's a huge plus if you are upgrading now, because for example, I was like upgrading from like a 5800X3D, and that's a no-brainer for me. That's no way I'm going to go Intel and use it for one generation and then upgrade next year and have to change the whole motherboard once again, right? So in terms of value proposition, yes, AMD is more expensive this time. Yes, the motherboards are probably more expensive as well. But if you take into account future upgrade generations, I mean, even if you just like use it for one more year, one more generation, I think it's worth it. I think it doesn't, I mean, the current price being a little bit higher doesn't mean it's a bad value if you consider that. So that's how I thought about upgrading. I'm not pro Intel or pro AMD. In fact, I just started like using AMD since 3800X, 3800X, and then I upgraded to 5800X3D. But I mean, even just upgrading for one generation, I think it's like way worth the price and the efforts. I'm not a computer like a guru. I mean, some people do enjoy like building the PC and stuff, right? Like, but that's not me. I just want to like enjoy the best gaming performance with the least effort. So for me, I just use air cooling, even with my previous 5800X3D. So minimum effort there, just like switch out the cooler, put in a new CPU, and be done with it, and that's about it, right? I didn't even have to change the RAM, because when I bought the 3800X, I already had like 3600 megahertz RAMs, so I didn't have to even switch the RAMs, and that's a huge plus for me. I'm not sure if many of you are in my camp, because I mean, people who would watch this kind of videos probably are more like a computer literate than me, more like computer gurus, don't mind building systems, air cooling, tubes and stuff. That's just not for me. But yeah, I mean, if you don't mind like switching boards, and of course the money is not too much of a concern to you, just go Intel. I think AMD has improved a lot latest this year, but I think the general consensus is that like Intel is still a little bit like brand superior, and I don't know at this point, but yeah. I've been using Intel for like forever. I started using in the like I don't know, 8268 series until I think the last one I used was something called 5930K. Yeah, and after that I switched to AMD, and now I'm not against Intel or anything. It's just that at that time I think it's like a more popular CPU. So that's the value. I mean, most of the reviews out there only look at the price to performance ratio of this particular CPU at this particular time, which makes no sense, right? Because I mean, it will probably come down in price in just like a couple of weeks, and not by a slight margin. So it may come down to the price of like 3900KS or 3900K in just a month's time, especially once the 7800 X3D comes out. I think it will, yeah. I think the price of this current so-called flagship consumer-grade CPUs will certainly come down a lot. So if you don't mind buying the top end and you don't want to spend crazy money at this time, just wait for a month, and I think that's sensible even in terms of a tech like this. Yeah, I think that's about the motherboard and the CPU. For the RAM, so obviously for AMD you can't go as high frequency as the RAM for Intel motherboards. So what I'm using right now is DDR5 6000 CL30. I think it's a RAM one. I think most of the RAMs out there, if you're using like 6000, it would be CL32 or something. Yeah, so this is a little bit more expensive, but I think still reasonable, especially when you compare it to the price of when DDR5 first came out. I'm getting like 64 gigabytes. So 64 gigabytes with this kind of clock speed and timing, I mean, could be like almost approaching the top. Dare I say. First, with Intel, you can go up to like 8,000. I think some people are trying to go to 10,000. I don't know. Yeah, I think that's something for next gen. So that's the RAM situation here. Okay, the third thing I'm going to talk about is this gen of CPUs from AMD would be core packing. So for 7950 X3D and 7900 X3D, so you will have like two CCDs and only one side has the V-cache on it. So many people are worried about also how should I handle those. If I use both, would it deteriorate my performance? Yeah, the answer is yes, but I think it's very minimal. If you look at the benchmarks, I think it's from Tom's Hardware or some other website, you see the difference between like turning one core totally off, the non-3D cache part, and having it at default, or having it on scheduler to prefer Vcache or to prefer frequency. I think the difference is very small and it's very individualized. So for these games, maybe I mean for most of the games, prefer Vcache should be turned on, and for some other games, I think actually just using it stock would be better. So I don't think there's a big difference there, and I don't think it's really hard to set up. You just like basically turn on Xbox game bar, make sure you have the latest BIOS, turn your profile to balance, maybe the power profile, and that's it. I don't think that's that complicated. I mean, I've seen one or two videos where it really complicated things. I don't think you have to go to those extremes. Just do the things that I've just mentioned, update your BIOS, and yeah, and have Xbox game bar. That's about it. Let me set your scheduler to prefer Vcache. So in any case, there isn't very big of a difference whether you turn that on or off. So that's core parking. And so in conclusion, whether you should get the 7950 X3D now, I don't think so really. I mean, not now. Even if you are after the top of the line CPU, you should wait for like a couple of weeks. I think for the price to come down to more sane levels. I think with the current specs and the price, I don't think this price will last very long. And once Easter holiday comes, I think the price will come down definitely. And especially when the 7800 X3D comes out, it will come down. But by that time, maybe you should seriously consider buying that instead. So I don't know if you're like me, you just want to try the like latest and greatest this generation. Just go ahead, but not now probably. If you want a more like value proposition, but still at the high end, I think 7800 X3D would be for you, and I mean for most people. I mean, if that came out at the same time as this one, I would be torn. I mean, I want to get the latest and greatest, but at the same time, if that one performs the same as this one, at a cheaper price, I may just go for that one. I mean, for like reasonableness, right? I'm not like a billionaire or anything, so wait for that to come out first. If you're still a high-end hardware gamer, but still sane. Otherwise, just wait maybe a couple of weeks and get this one. And that really depends on where you're coming from. If you already have an Intel CPU, if you are coming from the 12th gen, for example, there's no point going for AMD, right? Because you can upgrade to the 3900K or 13700K for for just the CPU price. You can just switch the CPU, like I said about the AM4. But if you're coming from AM4, like I said, it's no brainer. I think at this stage, at this point of time, to upgrade to AM5. So another point about that is I think the CPUs in recent years have gone up in performance quite a bit, right? So in the past, when I was like updating my GPU every generation, I was just using the same CPU through and through. Like I didn't have to like switch my CPU for 3 or 4 generations. I think partly because of Intel's marketing strategy at the time. So during that decade or half a decade, like Moore's law is basically that. So you don't get a double in performance every year. Instead, you get very little performance for basically the same price as last gen. But in recent years, I think the situation has changed since the Ryzens have come out. I think AMD has really pushed the game and pushed the ball back to Intel. And so I think in recent years, even if you like change your CPU every single year, it doesn't mean waste of money. You will see some performance improvement, definitely. Just like, for CPUs, if you buy the flagship for like every generation, you will see the performance hike. I'm actually glad to see the CPU market catching up with this GPU improvements, but that means that you have to upgrade more often if you are after the latest technology. Anyway, that's my rant for today. I'm going to beat this guy again in Wulong. I loved playing this game so far. Some people are not happy with the system, but I like it. I've played through lots of games like Elden Ring and Sekiro, Dark Souls 3, but this game still hooks me. So I'm just going to play some more and then have another round next time. Hope you've enjoyed me. I feel like having this game screen on would be a little bit less boring. I'm just standing in the same spot like all the time. But Thanks for watching today, and I hope to share with you some of my other thoughts on the hardware scene in the future. Stay tuned and don't forget to like and subscribe. Cheers.